What is up, DTube Steam blockchain? So today I want to talk about this concept of creation being. I heard this great explanation that sort of made sense for me, and that was this idea that what you're seeing as creation is mainly a dot, and the landscape around it is mainly nothingness, and it's expanding. And on this nothingness, you can sort of create your own act. You can sort of create your own sort of thing. So imagine a photo or imagine a landscape that is completely white, and then creation, what people are paying attention to and seems to be the whole full picture, it's just a black dot on this endless vast empty endless white space. It's a blank canvas, and on this canvas you can sort of create anything here. And even modern science is now showing that creation, you can sort of pack it down to something smaller than an atom. And of course they said this with the Big Bang, that everything came from nothing. And then they also said that we may see the big crunch, where everything shrinks back into less than an atom again. So of course, if you hear this and if you try to analyze it, the human mind cannot really grasp creation. It cannot really, it cannot, let's say, analyze it. It cannot understand it. But if you really consider creation and the magic that it is in many ways, I think this explanation in many ways may actually be true. Because, I mean, if we're looking at it, we can also see it, we can observe that things seems to expanding. Things seems to be getting better. Things seems to be getting a little bit more complex in some ways. So I love this this view of looking at it. So what humans usually seems to be doing is they're looking at creation, they're looking at the dot, and they're almost looking at it as a fixed reality. That, okay, this is it, and that's just the way it is. But I think that some more and more people, especially with the internet, I mean, if you really understanding the internet, you see these new smartphones becoming more high-end. Isn't stuff shrinking in ways? Aren't you starting to observe the dot in some ways, where you can almost, the whole sort of the big thing that people were thinking were the big thing, it's in your phone now. Everything is in the gadget. And then you're starting to see, oh, wait a sec, this was not really the full picture. This was the dot. This was the tiny dot. That a lot of that is just past memory that people are sort of repeating, and that's very fascinating when you consider it. That concept that people mainly repeating a lot of old memory, and they're going through cycles. So same as if you look up in the sky, you think you're seeing something, but most is just empty space. But the way our eyes are, if you look at stars, for example, it looks like they're super close to each other. But that's just how your eyes are made when you're observing the universe. Most of it is just emptiness. Most of it is just nothing, okay? But at the same time, from nothing, stuff emerge. So it sounds super magical for the human mind, but if you really consider it, it seems to be making some sense, I would say. Of course, people have different sort of views on a lot of these stuff, but But if a person really has perceived something in their life, um, they can see that there is something larger at play at all times. And it's very interesting how creation is sort of being, maybe you can call it, the creation is being zoomed out a little bit with so we were really zoomed in, especially a couple of 100 years ago, really zoomed into something that looked super important, and then we start to zoom out a little bit more, zoom out a little bit more, like the Huawei P30 Pro. You either zoom in or zoom out. Let's say they started with the zoom in, then they zoom out. If you don't know, the Huawei P30 Pro has an amazing camera, amazing zoom capabilities. So it's like humans, in terms of evolution, start very petty, very petty. It's all about survival, and then starting to slowly zoom out, starting to see the bigger picture, and then you see that the picture is mostly empty, that people haven't really created much here. Now we can see, if we go back in history, on the super amazing structures and buildings that people sort of knew, they sort of have had a bigger understanding of how human consciousness worked, and they created a lot of amazing sculptures and amazing buildings that we don't even know today how they did create. So it's kind of interesting how yeah, it's just fascinating. So there are two things here. So a human being themselves, if they have a personality, they can be somewhat of an actor in this world, same as you are having an act being played. But if you make yourself, either, I mean, you could play this however you want. Either you can make yourself into that you sort of your own sort of actor role becomes smaller, and then sort of the act becomes bigger. Or of course, a person, if they want to do their own sort of they can make this huge actor role with them at the center as well, or they can just let the act play out. So it's really interesting here how creation has allowed a lot of freedom here for an individual human experience of life, and how they can consider, let's say, the mystery of things. But mystery is actually just something that, something for us becomes mysterious when we don't really exactly understand how it works, or it might become magical for us in our mind, while creation probably is not really magical. It's just creation, just cause and effect. So I like to consider these things. So instead of people considering how they fit in as a cog in a machine in the creation, they have this blank white canvas, this landscape, blank picture, and you can sort of create whatever you want here. Whatever you want. It's like it's your play, and that is that's a viewpoint I think that can probably help a lot of people to probably feel a bit more limitless, because then they see that they don't have to, then they're not so much in a box anymore, perhaps. And then they probably is going to get a little bit more excited, because then they sort of understand that it's not a fixed place. Stuff changes all the time, and that becomes really fascinating in many ways. So that is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. Of course, this is just a concept. It may not actually be how it is, but humans, I mean, if you just look at them, most of them are not really exploring consciousness that much. They are mainly going on memory, so it sort of makes sense in many ways that, well, we probably would, obviously people, things would look probably way different if people use more consciousness, and then sort of this idea makes sense that, yeah, people can sort of create sort of anything they want here. uh, so that is what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting what people pay attention to. And I do think when you're seeing people seems to be wondering a little bit more now, and be a little bit more curious than from what I saw how people was maybe 10 years ago. So it seems like people are slowly starting to expand their borders of ignorance a little bit, and that is kind of cool to see, because that sort of opens up for more possibility for new cool things to happen, and for people, so they don't have to be sort of stuck in some specific loop of things. So yeah, that's what I want to talk a little bit about today. Have a great day, DTube and Steam blockchain. Bye bye.